Well, hospital porter's pride and dignity stopped the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV, and welcome to the video that skeptics said I would never make. This is the video they said would never appear, and here it is. Yes, it is. If you remember the live stream I did for the launch of Artemis II, I remember, as I said at the time, it was a little bit truncated and a little bit thin. Because I was feeling ill and it was late at night, I was not in a position, I think, I had a few problems with it, so for that reason I actually have I decided to just leave it as it was and then just end the live stream, and said I would come back later on after I've been to Weird Weekend North, and I would do another video. I do another video and or live stream about this issue, and I'm going to do a live stream as well about this, probably at the weekend. But this is actually the it'll probably be after the weekend, actually, because I'm away on the Saturday, unless I do one Friday, I'm not sure. But this is basically the debrief of the Artemis II mission. Now, at the time I'm recording this, as you know, Artemis II has returned safely to Earth, and all the astronauts on board are alive and well. At least they are for the moment. Let's just hope that stays that way. And everything really went without a hitch. There were no real problems. The toilet got blocked at one point. But, you know, that's about I think they just had to put some nappies on. You know, they had to put the nappies on, which astronauts often wear anyway. Remember that lady who was on a previous mission? She put one on when she was put in the capsule, just in case, you know, because she was in there for 6 hours. Now, first thing I've got to point out, first of all, is no green screen again. I can't. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a garden centre. I'm going to buy some of those bamboo poles, you know, the bamboo rods you use in the garden. I think that's the best thing I can use to extend the green screen frame, because at the moment it's too short, and the thing I can't find the thing I used last time to extend it. So that's what I'm going to do at some point, and then we'll go back to using the green screen. Second thing, you may think I'm a little bit overdressed because I'm indoors at the moment, but I've got my outdoor hoodie on with a hood up. The heating in my home is not working right now, and it's bloody freezing in here. I've got a blanket wrapped around my legs as well. And it's actually been a bit chilly here in Oxford. I don't know about where you are, but it was quite warm last week before I went away, and now it's gone quite cold. I should point out, those of you waiting for a Weird Weekend North reportage, I am not doing one, I'm afraid. Sorry about that, but it'll be I think the fifth one I've done. Don't want to jump the shark. Also, but the good news is I've done an audio roamcast, as Niall Murphy calls it, and the audio will be played on Hapanwo Radio, so you can hear it there. Within the next month or so, I will play that on Hapanwo Radio. Okay, guys. So the best place to begin probably is with, as I said, the comments. I didn't read out the notice comments on the live stream. I didn't do a lot of things on the live stream I normally do, because I said I was feeling ill. It was late at night, so I cut an awful lot back on that particular live stream, as you know if you've seen it. I mean, it was pretty long anyway, so it's probably just as well I did. But so we'll go through the notice comments first. This is from the notice on the original live stream, long since gone. Okay, and then we will then go to the comments that were left on the video since then, which I will also address. These are the comments that were on various places, especially the reply to comments videos, which I thought were not appropriate for the reply to comments videos, because I said there were too many of them. So we'll go through them first. Also, there's a couple more things I want to do in the meantime. But first of all, so to begin with the comments on the notice, which you won't find because I deleted it a long time ago. Over the moon, of course, says here, originally, Jarrah White stated that if the astronauts return alive, it would be the greatest I told you so moment of his life. He went as far as to stake his reputation on the claim that the radiation would be lethal. That doesn't make sense. If they return alive, it would be the greatest I told you so moment of his life. Okay. Now he appears to be searching for an exit strategy. Allow me to quote Mr. White's latest offering. If by some miracle this rocket gets off the ground and makes it past the translunar injection phase, I want to see the astronauts exonerate themselves by recording a continuous video showing themselves floating around the cabin and doing stuff impossible to fake. And in the same shot, show the Earth far away out of the window. No camera cuts, no blackouts between interior and exterior, just a continuous sequence with no ambiguity. If they can do that, without the usual blackouts or camera cutting shenanigans we saw on Apollo. I will accept that as proof and acknowledge it as such. That's a quote, I think. There's no quote marks on here, but that's what he meant. And then over the moon says, so he's going to cry hoax. Well, who would have picked that? Well, so the thing is, over the moon, I'm actually really amazed at the kind of like amazing explosion of like gaslighting and double dealing and kind of like weird combination between, aggression and then retreat by the NASA believers over this. This seems to have galvanized the NASA believers far more than it has we Apollo HB's hoax believers. And so, but then you, the NASA believers, are then projecting that onto us. You're the ones who are accusing us of having Artemis derangement syndrome. And I know from a fact, because I've already seen some of the comments, I've already been looking through some of the comments you put on the reply to comments video, which I will not include in this one. I'll wait till the next reply to comments video. It's pretty clear. I want to wonder exactly how much we are even communicating right now. It seems like we're talking at cross purposes in a way that's never happened before in the dialogue and the competition and the debate between my camp and yours. And I don't know how long that's going to go on for. I'll try to maintain communications with you. But on the basis of this comment here, now, Jarrett actually said that he's searching for an exit strategy. What he actually did say was he said that there actually was, conveniently, because the moon happened to be full, it was a pink moon, actually. And I found was very interesting. And indeed, there was a certain amount of narrowness of the launch windows. because I think the reason for that, it seems, is that there was a magnetotail on the Earth's magnetic field during the various solar flares. And this, Jarrah said, was providing some kind of radiation shielding for the craft, at least until they went into the lunar transit phase of their free trajectory return. Obviously, there was no orbit there. This craft never went into lunar orbit, unlike Apollo 8 allegedly did. So the lunar flyby on the far side of the moon, they were then exposed to a full radiation dose. But on the journey, the 3 days there, 3 days back, they were actually, after TLI, they were actually within this magnetotail. That's what he was saying. Despite that, there's no way in the world that that these astronauts would not have received, according to Jarrah's original thesis. I won't read the article now; it's on our list. I was going to read it, but it's kind of like out of date now a little bit, and Jarrah has updated it quite considerably. But there's no way they wouldn't have received a considerable radioactive dose, a radiation dose, which it is possible to survive this or even experience only mild symptoms. Yet, what will they be like down the line? A couple of months, a few months, or a couple of years down the line? This often does bounce back as another disease. Most notably, certain forms of cancer. Now, I hope and pray that Reed, Vic, Chrissy, and Jezza will be safe, and that will not happen. And I do suspect it will not. And the reason is it's also another possibility, which I'm considering. There's several possibilities we can go into, and indeed, investigation is ongoing on this. But it could be that the craft was in a emission control, that is radio silence, and a state during the entire mission in low Earth orbit. And what was actually sent to the moon was a non-unmanned relay. Something would have gone to the moon. I mean, people were picking it up on their telescopes. Something, a surrogate for the Orion spacecraft went to the moon. The Ingenuity, as it was called, went to the moon. There's no doubt about that, because you can't fake something like that when there's people with amateur telescopes looking at it. In fact, this is the case with Apollo to a lesser degree. That there was obviously something went to the moon that was transmitting signals back to Earth, which appeared to be genuine. But anyway, so you've really got to. I think this is something I've often complained about with skeptics, and with skeptics, you know what skeptics keep saying. I said this in the Pensa video. They say, "You woo-woos, you just believe things without investigating," and when you investigate, they say, "Why are you investigating that? Stop! You can't win, you see. But you also can't win in this way, because they'll say things like, you woo-woos, even the scientific ones like Jarrah, once you've made up your mind on something, you never change your mind. You never, ever revise your original conclusion, and you never change your mind. And when someone does that, what do? You criticize him for changing his mind. You see, you can't win. Jarrah is now being castigated by the NASA supporters because he's changed his mind. Yet when before, if he hadn't changed his mind, you'd also castigate him. Indeed, you always did. Oh, anyway. Arts Channel says, we'll be there watching the crash. God, Arts Channel. I remember you posted some comments in the live chat along this line. Oh, is it going to blow up? I thought to myself, oh, dearie me, we've got a doom monger in the live chat. Well, I'm pleased to say, Art, and I'm sure you agree with me, as you can see, that I'm sure you can see that everything went perfectly. There were no problems. They took off, flew into space, and wherever it went when it was in space, that is the capsule with the 4 astronauts in, it returned safely to Earth. Now, I know this. Now, we're going to watch that in a minute, actually, because I haven't seen it yet, believe it or not. Okay. And Over the Moon says, drink your fill, Ben, as many radiation romantics will be doing. This is a kind of suck it up thing. You see, this is, again, I've said this over, we get this over and over again, that this is some kind of moment of vindication for NASA supporters. That what we've just witnessed over the last 10 days proves that Apollo was real and we were wrong all along. Does it? Does it, though? That's something I'm going to address, and I'm going to address it in the live stream as well. But to begin with, what's next? Let's just watch this, because I haven't seen this yet. Now, the actual splashdown, the re-entry and splashdown actually happened in the early hours of Sunday morning when I was fast asleep in my bed. I didn't stay up for it. I was just too tired. I was at Weird Weekend North. I did catch a couple of minutes of a news story the next day, but basically I haven't actually seen this in full. So let's watch it. Let's just find the video and watch it. Here we go. It's Artemis re-entry splash. I've actually downloaded this so we don't get ad breaks. There we go. Oh, should we watch that bit again? Let's watch that bit again.
And we have
There we go. Look. I see the capsule comes off the service module. Yeah.
And we have confirmation of crew module, service module separation.
Yeah.
And we have crossed the threshold, now entering the Earth's atmosphere.
Once they actually enter the atmosphere, it's actually very quick.
400,000 feet, traveling 34,800 feet per second.
Did you say what? How
entering
high?
The Earth's atmosphere.
Did you say 100,000 feet?
We're at 400,000 feet.
Oh, 400,000 feet, yeah. Once it actually starts, it's very quickly. It happens very quickly. I mean, the actual re-entry and splashdown actually happens within a few minutes. It's very quick.
Traveling 34,800 feet per second.
There it all goes to the parachutes.
And there go the first series of parachutes. And we're on drogues.
And Houston, we're visual 2 drogues out the window.
2 good drogue shoots.
Hopefully
we copy, we see them.
Next up, the deployment of pilot parachutes that will pull the main chutes out. Time to splash down 3 minutes and 10 seconds.
Let's see. There'll be those obviously aren't the main parachutes because they're not big enough. But those are designed to pull the main.
Perfect descent rate according to flight dynamics.
Good rates on 2 drogues.
The crew will be feeling gravity now. Yes, come on in.
Passing through 10,000 feet, still on drogues.
Just we need the main ones come out. Come on. When do the main parachutes come out? There we go. There we go. There comes the main ones, hopefully. Yay.
Main chute deploy. We're at 5,000 feet. Search and recovery beacon has been activated on integrity.
Yep, there we go. Whoa. Parachutes come out.
And we have 3 good main chutes. Good 3 main chutes, good reefing, good descent rate.
Good rates, and we see 3 good-looking parachutes.
Integrity splashdown, sending
Yep, there we go.
post-landing command now.
I didn't know when that was going to happen.
Splashdown confirmed.
Copy splashdown. Waiting on VLDR.
Splashdown confirmed at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time. From the pages of Jules Verne to a modern-day mission to the moon, a new chapter of the exploration of our celestial neighbor is complete. Integrity's astronauts back on Earth.
All right, so this is this boat that are going to rescue them. See, they've opened the hatch now.
And as there are mission audio loops in mission control in Houston,
the big balloons on top is in case it flips over, so it doesn't go completely over. They're just floats.
is a mission audio loop here on the ship, and it was just reported out that the side hatch is open. Side hatch of Integrity is open. You're getting these beautiful shots from our aerial assets.
I would have probably stayed up to do this live if I'd been home.
The ship itself, where I'm on, just 3,000 yards away. And the recovery team here on the ship just got a report from the undersea medical officer who is inside the capsule with the crew. He is reporting all 4 members are green. All of our 4 astronauts, Reed, Victor, Christina, Jeremy, green, meaning they are feeling great. Not the complexion of their skin. They are feeling great.
No. That would be something. If they came back as reptilians. There was a kind of a meme going around. Why don't they should put on monkey masks and pretend it's like a Planet of the Apes. Where have we come back? Oh my God.
And ready to be extracted as soon as possible.
This is interesting. I'm not seeing this yet.
And the
I'm not seeing
initial.
this. There they go.
You can hear it.
They're able to walk, I see. They are able to walk. Can't be easy doing that because everything's bobbing up and down everything's kind of bobbing up and down in the
Jubilation here in the flight control room.
On the sea.
First crew member is out of Integrity.
See, there's some guys. See, there's some swimmers. There's some ducks in the water just in case they fall overboard to rescue them.
We are expecting the other crew members momentarily to be extracted.
Who's that? There's another one. Is that another one? Can't actually see who they are. But you can see the orange spacesuits there. There's another one.
2 crew members out.
Yeah, so there's 2 out. I mean, where have they been all this time? It's good, I suppose, is the question. Have they really gone to the moon, or were they in low Earth orbit under radio
2 crew
suns?
members out, 2 to go.
Also, I said, yeah, maybe they actually went to the moon when they may have been accompanied by an SSP craft that like cast some kind of shield around them to protect them. So maybe they did actually go to the moon with a secret space program vehicle that acted as a mobile radiation shield. That's a possibility. I know Jarrow won't go there, but I do.
We're about 1 hour from sunset out in the Pacific. Everything continues to go well. Integrity's systems functioned perfectly during its entry back to Earth.
Yeah, there was only the toilet. The toilet got blocked because
the commander, who will be last,
the outflow pipe apparently got frozen.
Reported that all the crew members were feeling very well.
There's also helicopters flying around as well, just in case. Okay, there's a 3rd one.
Crew member number 3 now out.
I think that's Victor in the middle there. That's Victor there because you can see by his skin color. So that there is Victor and 2 others are out.
And now standing by for the commander, Reed Wiseman, who will be last
Oh,
out
there
of
you
his
go.
ship.
Of course, the commander's got to be out last. Yeah, that's always the way.
Bobbing in the Pacific under almost ideal conditions. Integrity spanned 694,000 miles during its journey.
If the weather was wet, there'd be some problems. They'd have to find another place where the weather was nice.
From launch to splashdown.
I say wet, not wet. If the weather was rough, storms. Because of course you can't. When the Soyuz craft and the Changxing craft lands in the Gobi Desert or Kazakhstan, for the Chinese and the Russians, they're on land, and they have to lift them out, I mean, sometimes they seem to be able to step out, which is interesting. Mind you, if you've been on the ISS or the
and we now have Reed Wiseman out of the vehicle.
Yeah, they're all
four
out,
crew
yeah.
members now out of Integrity.
So I suppose the thing is, a lot of people say, well, they look very chipper, considering they've been in microgravity. Yeah, but if you're on the ISS or something, or the Chinese space station, it's a bit different because you're up there for like 6 months. These guys have been up there for 10 days. As it happens, you need to exercise even in 10 days because you lose 40% of your muscle mass even in 10 days. Yeah. Yeah, they're all out. So they seem to be on some kind of specially designed pontoon or raft. Yeah. There they are.
This is Mission Control Houston here in the Artemis Flight Control Room. A number of flight controllers basking in the glory of the successful end of this mission that carried 4 astronauts around the moon on a lunar flyby, and the first test flight of Orion with crew members on board. Splashdown occurring an hour and 32 minutes ago after a flawless descent back into the Earth's atmosphere for the vehicle.
Yeah.
Crew members in good shape.
Well, I'm glad they're back.
Enjoying
glad
their
they're
time
back.
right now on the front porch, as it were, the inflatable raft alongside of their Integrity spacecraft.
Well, there you go, guys. There you are. There you have it. So that's that done. They're back. So that's the first time I've seen that whole thing. That's the first time I've actually seen it. So what's next? The space weather issue. Yeah, there were some solar flares, actually. I know because I was keeping a record of these things on space weather. There were some solar flares. They weren't actually too bad. They weren't actually as bad as you might think, because I think they were like they weren't direct hits, and there was the magneto tail as well. I can't remember all the details. Sort that out on the live stream. I've done the no emergency return. 9-minute delay on the live TV coverage. Yeah, I've done that. Okay, but now, so what actually did happen? I mean, we'll go through we'll come on to that in a minute, but I just want to go through the Artemis II comments, because I've got a number of comments that were posted on the reply to comments video, which I'll go through now. So to begin with, Over the Moon said, the life and times of a moon hoax. As I commented on various YouTube channels, he used to have a products page on his website. Okay, we got a YouTube link here where he claimed the items as his own. However, a tiny bit of research showed that they were not his. They actually belonged to NASA, BMW, Suzuki, Hummer, etc. When I made this public, he removed the products page and eventually the entire website. Has it resurfaced under a different URL? Let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at this particular. Let's have a look. Who's
There's a
that?
video about Rasa Vihari. He's a guy that claims to be a PhD.
Oh, who's this? Who's this guy? The TT guy. All right. Okay. Well, this is a 9-minute video. I don't. The answer is I don't know specifically about Raz's in that respect. Okay, so Over the Moon says, surprise, surprise, SpaceX TERAFAB announcement. Right, what's this? This is another thing it's another YouTube thing here. Whoops. So let's have a look at that. This is 43 minutes here. Oh, Terafab. Tesla Terafab. There's 43 minutes. Could you summarize it for me, please, OTM? Where are we? Okay. Okay, so Over the Moon says, ignition, NASA's plan for the moon. This is what the Artemis program should have been from the very start. Appointing Jared Isaacman, a highly successful businessman and experienced astronaut, as NASA administrator was exactly the move required. His leadership is finally bringing the mission-first, results-driven culture needed to put boots back on the lunar surface for good. It's another YouTube URL here. Jared Isaacman actually looks strangely like a man in black, which I always think is quite amusing. He wears a suit. I mean, I don't know if it's a joke, but he has a slightly sneaky look about him as well. And this is Over the Moon Multimedia Ignition, NASA's plan for the moon. Right, you are. Is this him? Yeah, this is him.
Of contractor positions to civil
That's
service.
it. His ears make like King Charles's look small, man. His ears are amazing, man, like radar dishes. In Britain, we call people like that wingnut. But look, his black suit. He doesn't have a black tie, but he's got this black suit on. Okay, so that's the next part. I don't really know what to answer to you. I don't really know how to respond to these things over the moon, because it just looks like your average things that, I mean, I can't disagree or agree with something. You're just providing me with video links. But anyway, let's see what this is here. We've got another one. Because apparently I know that Isaacman wants to build a moon base on the moon, so we'll see how that goes. This is 53 minutes. Oh, it's a Q&A with the crew from quarantine. All right, here we go. Oh, here they are.
Comes from Irene Klotz with Aviation Week.
Yeah, they are. They look all right. They don't look too bad. As I said, I hope their good health continues. I very, very much do. But wherever they've been up in space, they've obviously come back safely, which is, no one's going to, or very few people would actually hope for otherwise. I think there's a kind of like, I don't know if there's a kind of, some kind of bloody weird narrative arc here that says, look, all this proves you wrong. It doesn't. I don't know why you think that. Okay. And Steve Polish says, quote, it's a quote by me, I'm not going to denounce Bill Casing, a man who's died and can no longer speak for himself based on your assertions alone. We know that you NASA supporters do misrepresent people. Quote by me. But okay to denounce Neil Armstrong and Apollo astronauts, many of whom are dead as liars and complicit conspirators. Right? Yes. Yes, right, because I'm not doing it based on someone's assertions alone. So yes, it is right. I mean, it's difficult to when someone dies. You've got to try and balance respect with truthfulness. And I've had to do this with Nick Pope's death because I am sad he's gone. He's part of the Nick Pope was part of the ufological furniture. I mean, you just switch on a TV show or a movie. You watch a movie and you just expect to see him there. It's kind of like, it's almost like a given. And now he's not there. It's going to be, his absence is going to leave a big hole. At the same time, we weren't on good terms. I had fallen out with him because of things he'd said. I think false information he'd given out, especially about the Rendlesham Forest incident. And I fell out with him for that reason. I mean, as you know from watching Ben in the Desert 2, I met up with him again at that private event at Contact in the Desert last year. And I felt compelled to behave in a civilized manner. So I exchanged greetings with him, friendly greetings. And that's the last time I ever saw him or spoke to him. And I'm glad I did. See, you've got to balance these things. In the case of the NASA astronauts, yeah, I wouldn't denounce them based on some one person's assertions alone. If someone suddenly popped up, stood on a bus and say, Ben, I think you ought to know Neil Armstrong used to eat kittens for breakfast. Just let you know. And he goes and sits back down in his seat. Right. That's denouncing a person on assertions alone. I wouldn't do that, but it's not the same thing. Anyway, Steve carries on. This amply illustrates your willingness to see facts as hearsay and vice versa, where your bias favors BS woo-woo stuff and is decidedly thin on basic Apollo hoax research. No, I've just explained that. Casing is on video telling where he got the idea to deny Apollo. He made the assertion, not me. Contrary to Walsh's repeated assertions, he wrote nothing on fabricated F1 thrust. He wasn't even at Rocketdyne when the F1 was configured for Saturn V. That's facts for me and a lie from Randy Walsh. Okay, so this is this doesn't make sense, and I suspect this is something that, Casing may have made this up just as a hyperbole, but this idea that he found this Vietnam veteran, and they really wanted to stick one to the American establishment because of the Vietnam War, which had ruined this man's life. And so they said, so there's so many things you could do. You could join one of the veterans associations. You could write a book. You could write articles. Vietnam veterans were doing this all the time. They were constantly doing this. You could have teamed up with Ron Kovic, the man in the Tom Cruise's character in Born on the 4th of July. He's based on a real Vietnam veteran who was injured in the line of duty, ended up in a wheelchair, changed his life. He ended up like being an anti-war activist. He could have done that. Oh no, we're gonna make up a really crazy story to really stick it to the man. It's just not credible, Steve. You say that's facts, but you don't ask these necessary questions. Okay, here we go. Clarkson Allen. JC. Okay, that's Jeremy Clarkson. So are you going to try and convince me that man hasn't walked on the moon? Marcus Allen. Yes, I'm going to try and convince you. All right, look. That's Marcus denying men landed on the moon for more than a decade before he went to the BIS and said, I was told that they'd landed on the moon. I believed it. And I should have say right here and now, I believe that they landed on the moon. He was later questioned by a BS member for clarity. Yeah. BIS member. Marcus says, you said something right at the beginning. You said, I do not doubt that man has landed on the moon. Is that correct? Marcus Allen, there's more than enough evidence that I'm persuaded by. He then left the BIS and went straight back to denying it. That's not a misrepresentation or blowing things out of proportion or a continuity glitch. That's Marcus reversing his position on man landing for all of 2 hours. I'll say it again, Ben. We only deal in facts and substantiated evidence. The only people regularly caught lying and misrepresenting Apollo are the Apollo hoax proponents. Okay, Steve, you're 100% wrong. There's no contradiction here. Okay, well, 10 years ago, Marcus was asked a very simple question by Clarkson. Well, let's face it, he's not a very complex man, is he? He's actually quite blunt about things. I think Marcus, and indeed I've spoken to Marcus about this, and Marcus, even at my own conference, Streaming Sources, he's said something similar, which is that that when what Jeremy meant was, are you going to convince me that the Apollo missions, as history taught us they are, were fake? I think that's how Marcus interpreted it. And then again, he goes to the BAS and he said this, I still believe they have landed men on the moon. There's more than enough evidence that I'm persuaded by. Okay, I agree with him. I think I very much doubt that nobody's ever been to the moon. I very much doubt it. When you consider the secret space program, I'm convinced that people have been to the moon too. But there's no contradiction here. I think we might have actually said this before. Steve Polish then said, a quote from me, are you now joining me in the world of tinfoil hat notoriety? Not possible, Ben. I have a more rational approach to science, evidence, and exposing Apollo hoax liars. The Vostok 2 anomalies were errors of judgment over imagery compounded by the well-known propensity for the USSR to lie, just as they had attempted and spectacularly failed at Nuremberg over the Katyn massacre, claiming the Cuban missiles were farm machinery planting the idea that the CIA killed JFK, the rumor that the USA invented AIDS, and the incorporation of the Baltic states in 1940 was entirely voluntary. Well, I mean, the idea that the CIA killed JFK doesn't just come from the Soviet Union at all. As for the AIDS thing, is very complicated. I'm not even sure how much you can say on YouTube. I know there was a very good documentary called In Lies We Trust by Dr. Len Horowitz, which I recommend. But I do cover this a little bit on my zombie talk, if you watch my zombie lecture. But apart from that, yeah, I mean, was the Soviet Union a bastion of truthfulness? Of course not. Okay. The first source of rapid condemnation of Apollo as a hoax, whether from evidence, historic antagonism, or sheer mischievous spite, should have been the USSR, but they didn't rubbish any aspect of Apollo. I know they didn't. That's because the Cold War was something very, very different at the levels of at the governmental levels. That's when they talk privately. The two sides talk privately to each other. The two sides behave very differently than they do when they're dealing with the general public. And indeed, read anything by Anthony Sutton, and there's many other sources that delve into this area, and indeed I have too. Basically, you might find there's far less rivalry when they're talking to each other privately, and far more cooperation than there is for public consumption when they deal with each other they present themselves for public consumption. That particular first was left to Bill Casey, who openly stated he was given the idea by the vagrant heroin addict John Grant. I've already covered that. To date, there is no evidence of sinister shenanigans or goings-on later presented to the public as an Apollo mission. Personal opinions on in-missionary imagery after mission press conferences, deaths at railway crossing, apparent tennis shoe footprints, and a lack of rover tracks, singly or collectively, are just that, personal opinions. Well, again, QV, for whatever reasons, you do align yourself with proven liars and their spoken sensationalism, ignoring completely the literal mountain of material evidence constituting proof any court would rule as forensic and factual. Well, I don't agree, and I've explained why. Steve Mumbling says, well, they're spending plenty of time in the Van Allen radiation belts. What was Jarrah White saying? Lol. Well, Jarrah has actually responded to that, talking about the what's it called? What did he call it? The magneto tail or something. Basically, it's because the moon was full. It allowed. It meant that basically the Earth was casting a kind of a natural radiation shield from its own magnetosphere into cislunar space. I think that's basically what he was saying. We'll talk about this some more in the live stream. Over the Moon says here. I think this is actually a thread. I have a concise reproduction of Jarrah's nonsense engraved on a brass plaque for my wall. His mathematical drivel, which sounded so impressive to his chums, all those grand claims the detectives lapped up, turned out to be a steaming pile. Over the Moon, that is Steve Mumbling's phrase, never repeat it. Well, who could have predicted that? Steve Mumbling, who doesn't seem to mind Over the Moon grabbing his catchphrase and breaching his copyright, says, apart from everyone on the face of the Earth with an IQ bigger than their shoe size, then nothing as it seems, says here. The idea of an alien base on the Moon, like flat Earth theories, persists despite overwhelming scientific evidence to the contrary. Both rely on distrust of institutions, selective interpretation of images, and the desire for mystery. While Artemis II's live views may not change minds, they add to the body of transparent real-time data and counter such myths like flat Earth. Lunar will likely endure in popular culture, not because of evidence, but because of storytelling and skepticism. What's that then? There is nothing. I thought you were a woo-woo like me. Whose side are you on here? Well, the idea of an alien base on the Moon is very interesting. There's several sources for this, including several people who staked their reputation and signed affidavits in 2001. People who worked for NASA. There's Carl Wolf and Donna Hare. Do you mean Anna Paulina Luna by any chance, by Luna? I don't know. It's down that bit. As you know, I'm not a flat earther. But the rest of it, I can't really gather. Okay, so we have a new thread here. Dave Langston said, "You say you couldn't see them faking it, yet I watched it in the footage showed before takeoff, before the end of the countdown, and then went to a blank screen. I remember watching the Challenger launch footage, and the launch coverage was totally different. All the shots from the ground, none of the internal shots from the shuttle. And why were they obsessed with animation? Just let us watch it launch as seen from the ground level. For me, I'm not convinced." Yeah, well, I'm not either, and I'll perhaps find another example for you in a minute. But I found it interesting. There was this live feed from Cape Canaveral. It was actually 9 minutes. It was actually not live. It was a 9-minute delay. And they did launch. I mean, they had to use animation up to a point because, I mean, there's no other craft with cameras that can actually film the object in space, the vehicle in space. So they had to use animation up to a point. Indeed, they did the same with Apollo, less sophisticated, of course, back in the 60s. But as for there was some strange things. Bart has actually discovered a couple of things. I remember the Challenger launch footage. I hate watching that. I can't watch it because it's just so horrible. Obviously because the rocket blows up. And then I hate the fact the bastard. I just as an aside, but I hate the first thing they do is they turn the camera on the astronauts' relatives watching it go up and blow up, and they're like crying and they're stunned. They don't know what to think. They're just overcome with shock and grief, and then they have to film that. I wish they hadn't done that. I thought that was horrible. I thought that was evil, quite frankly. And so when it comes to sensationalism, that's the place to go, I think. All right, now where is okay, right, here we go. Now there's this first of all, there's this, someone's mentioned fakery. Now I didn't know about this, but there's this there's someone called B. Gates is a Psycho, which is very good. Actually, this is actually a very, very good name. It's actually a very, very good name for this particular person. Here we go. Let's just watch.
Jeremy Hansen.
This is at the beginning when they all come out to meet people before they get on board the bus to take them to the launch pad.
Specialist Christina Cook and Jeremy Hansen taking their first steps outside for their historic test flight.
I'm going to pause this right here because everyone has been asking me to do videos on this Artemis II hoax. So let's start right at the beginning of the launch crew walkout.
To a wonderful applause from the crowd. They're looking really excited.
Now, what I want you to pay attention to are the cell phones that the people in the crowd are holding and recording and taking pictures with. Pay attention to these phones. I'm going to freeze frame the shots where they're holding them up, aiming them at the astronauts, and you will see that there are no...
Some big really smiles. I love that.
Okay, now we don't have to watch this whole thing, but basically, as you can see here, you can't actually, the astronauts are not appearing in the videos on the phone camera screens. Now, this would indicate that this is actually a composite shot. So you get the people taking the photos and the astronauts walking out separately. Now, why would that be? I mean, and what's more, I find it unlikely that someone would fake this because it's actually not, it shouldn't be necessary to fake that. It's one of the easiest and simplest things just to do, which is believable. All you need is 4 guys in a spacesuit, basically. All they have to do is walk out in front of a crowd and then let them photograph them and speak to them and ask them questions for the newspapers. I mean, why would you need to fake that? What about all the journalists who said they were at that press conference? You know, because there were multiple journalists who were actually there. I mean, you can't pull them all to one side and say, look, just pretend there are astronauts there. Just talk to them as if there was someone there, but there'll be no one actually there. So I find that a bit unlikely, actually. But that's a good example of what we're talking about here. And here we go. David Smith says on Artemis II launch livestream, received one of the highest number of hearts from you. Yeah, it's almost as if they newer, smaller cameras and other tech that can be used to show a major event. Oh, sorry, he did send me hearts. So that's actually not what he said. That's actually on the notice. And then Dave Langston says to Over the Moon, that didn't happen on the NASA live stream. I noticed it on the BBC. It had some second-hand streams I watched. It's nothing suspicious. It often happens at launches. Dave Langston then says to Over the Moon, why not show the launch from ground level? Why flick between cameras and pack it with animation? A straight view of the launch is sufficient. I watched on Ben's feed, which was BBC, I think. And why were they talking as if the USA had no experience of this sort of thing? I find it odd, that's all. Just show us the plain facts and let us see what's going on. No flick between various cameras like a movie would. Possibly, Dave. I mean, I noticed also that it appeared there was a discrepancy in timing. It appeared that the rocket actually launched maybe 3 seconds earlier, and they were doing the countdown. You were hearing the countdown. And then the rocket appeared to launch slightly earlier. Now, that's because whoever was reading out the countdown at the studio was slightly a few seconds behind. So it looked as if the rocket went maybe 3 seconds earlier. It took off 3 seconds earlier. Over the Moon says to Dave Langston, I can give you a single camera shot as soon as my work colleague sends me his friend's video. They use multiple angles because it's better in every way. I watched the BBC lunchtime news at work today. When the segment on the launch began, I walked over to the TV to hear it better. Upon returning to my desk, a colleague mentioned his friend was in Florida on holiday and saw the launch and had sent him a video. How do you account for that if it never happened? How do you account for the hundreds of thousands of people who had the same experience? All right, well, if that is what Dave Langston is asserting, I have to agree with Over the Moon. Indeed, the angry astronaut was there, and he did his own coverage of it. Oh, in fact, but I don't think that's what Dave here is now saying this. He said, where did I say it didn't happen? I said I wasn't convinced by the coverage. As usual, someone who doesn't read and has no critical thinking, no wondering if what we see is the full representation of the facts or simply a movie. All right. Thanks for clarifying that, Dave. I didn't think that's what you were suggesting either. And then Over the Moon says to Dave Langston, why launch a rocket in front of hundreds of thousands of people only to broadcast fake coverage on television? Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think that's a good question, Over the Moon. Yeah. And Dave says to Over the Moon, just because they can't launch a rocket doesn't mean it went to the moon. Yes. My point is NASA rarely answers a question honestly. Look at 3i Atlas. They wouldn't answer a direct question about its anomalies. Doesn't mean it wasn't a natural phenomenon, but why so cloak and dagger? Just be honest and say we don't understand it, so more research is needed. Instead, they dismiss it and belittle anyone who questions what it is. That's why I have no faith in anything NASA puts out. I agree, Dave. I agree. Launching a rocket into space is one thing. Sending it to the moon with a human crew is 100% different. And you're right about NASA and 3i Atlas. You're right about how they just brushed off their anomalies and said, it's a comet, it's a comet, it's a comet. And Avi Loeb is a bastard because he doesn't agree with us. Yeah, I know. In fact, I've done entire videos on that very subject. So I agree with you 100% about this and NASA. Over the Moon says to Dave Langston, you were doubting the footage. My question to you remains. Dave Langston, I was asking why so many shots from inside an animation. My question also still remains unanswered. Well, I think actually Dave Over the Moon is right about this particular one. I mean, it may be stylistically bad. Maybe it would be better just to have like something a little more current affairs report-like rather than cinematic. The animation is necessary once the rocket is out of sight from the ground. You need animation for it, yeah. So if you think it's out of sight from the ground, then everyone keeps saying, oh, well, it must have gone to the moon then because NASA tell us. Just like with Apollo. Over the Moon says to Dave, how can you illustrate to people what's going on without using some animation? Another craft flying alongside? Well, Over the Moon, it's funny you should say that because it's possible there was another craft flying alongside it, a secret space program vehicle to protect the Ingenuity spacecraft from from solar radiation. However, I'm sure it didn't have any cameras on it. Certainly none that they were going to send to the news. Dave Langston says to Over the Moon, totally missing the point. You're like a sponge accepting everything at face value. We don't need an illustration of what's going on. It's obvious they're launching a rocket. However, where it's going and what those on board do is easily faked. That's the whole point. It's not a movie. We just need some genuine information without the sentimental drivel and woke inflection of the last moon mission was full of white men. Problem is those with the addenda keep spoon-feeding the gullible. I think you mean agenda. It's more than possible that what we were shown in the story is quite true, but like the Apollo missions, there are questions that seem to be ignored or brushed under the carpet and never answered unambiguously. That's the point. Yes, thousands saw rocket launch, just like Musk or the European Space Agency do. It's not unique. However, what I do wonder is, did it head for the moon? And when it reappears, did they bring back a truthful experience? Exactly, Dave, exactly. That's absolutely true. The whole thing was very, very loaded with publicity. Of course, you had the first woman and the first person of color and the first Canadian. Actually, I don't think Canadian counts as something woke that I have to say in that voice. But yeah, it was very political. The choice of the crew was firstly very woke. They wanted like non-white people and women on this first cislunar mission, supposedly since Apollo. They were all white men. And of course, the Canadian meant it was an international mission because there was one of the crews from Canada. But yeah, so there was a lot of political things there. But yes, faker. I agree with you what you say here. Yeah. We shouldn't brush these things under the carpet. Definitely. So you're right, basically. Over the Moon says to Dave, what do you mean when it reappears? There's live 24-hour coverage from launch to splashdown. Yes, from NASA. And Dave says here, when it splashes down, of course, have you any independent verification where it is? Or are you assuming that all that NASA says? My God, how gullible. NASA says so it must be true. Maybe it is. However, how do you know? Dave, Over the Moon says to Dave, what independent verification would satisfy you? That's a good question. I mean, for me, seeing as the flows of information are so restricted, it's difficult to know. I mean, I believe I think there's enough independent verification to say that America exists. I have been there, but, I would say that, wouldn't I? But, Professor Brian Cox said, well, it's the same thing as saying the moon landings as America exists. Are you saying that's fake? But yeah, in this case, we do have a flow of information that is restricted, and the potential for fraud is there. It exists, and that's a fact. Dave says to Over the Moon, are you being deliberately obtuse? You're seriously telling me that you believe all that NASA spoon feeds you is the truth? My God, we are lost as a species. No critical thinking, a drone. You're one of the reasons the C word lie, the disease, which has subsequently been admitted by various governments worldwide, was allowed to be inflicted on humanity. It will never even cross your mind why we're going to the moon when we've been there and know how to do it, albeit 50 years ago, allegedly. Please have some critical thought, at least mull over the possibilities and then decide what you believe. Don't just stare at the screen without thinking and believe what it shows you, please. Well, yeah, unfortunately, Dave, there are far more crazy things that are presented on TV, on through the media, which people believe. Far more outrageous things which are far less common sense. I mean, it's a good question, though. I mean, why has it taken this long? I mean, when my parents watched the moon landing, they watched the Apollo 11 moon landing before I was even thought of, and then they believed, because on that trajectory of progression, it was understandable they would think this. That, there'll be more missions, and then probably by the end of the 70s, there'll be a hotel on the moon, and we can take our holidays there, which was understandable because if the progression stayed on that trajectory, that's what would have happened. But it didn't. Any sci-fi space fan from the 60s who could look forward to the present day would gasp in dismay. It's 2026, and you've only just started going back to the moon? What's wrong with you? By the way, I don't like the way I look with this hoodie and these glasses. I look like Norm, the norm, break from the norm. But it's cold in here, so there, the hood's there. Over the Moon says to Dave, you make a lot of assumptions about me. I'll forget those because it isn't about me. So I'll ask the question again. What independent verification would satisfy you? Dave says, oh, look, troll. Oh, that's unfair, Dave. About what information we can consume. Just taking one information source and believing it's accurate is not good. You said, but it's on the NASA live feed. The implication is that you believe every word. I would like to see verification of the information. I'm not sure exactly how exactly until we can. Then it's no more of a story by NASA. I agree, but I think you're being unfair and rude here, Dave, to Over the Moon. And Over the Moon says you're being distinctly rude and aggressive, a trait that has become more common among people like you since Thursday. Okay, Over the Moon, I think in this particular case, you're right. Dave is getting a bit arsey with you, and that I think is wrong. But I think there's a lot of projection going on among the NASA believers here. A lot of accusations, I say, of Artemis derangement syndrome. You pretend to assume I take everything at face value, but I do not. You inquire about independent verification, yet refuse to specify what verification would suffice. Don't worry about it. You all do that. Well, Over the Moon, it's not an easy question to answer, because what verification would suffice? What independent information would we accept and agree with? Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question when you consider it's so out of sight, out of mind. But I think it's got a lot to do with reputation. In this case, we're dealing with a little boy who cried wolf. If it was someone with a reputation for honesty, we would see it differently. And indeed, Dave's made that point. Dave says, away fool to oh, come on, don't be rude, Dave. You don't read comments properly or answer a question. You read what you see. I'm happy to discuss if you read properly and have a reasonable opinion, but just saying. But NASA said and showed us animation, etc. isn't proof of anything. My questions are only that. I don't believe NASA tells the truth. You do. That's where we are. Over the Moon says to Dave, you are being aggressive and rude. Well, he is, to be honest, Over the Moon, yes. I never said, but NASA showed so, or whatever nonsense you want to attribute to me. Dave says to Over the Moon, oh, what drivel, typical snowflake, grow up and find your space, safe space. Dave, your attitude's not helping here. It's not. This is not... it's better if you keep calm and maintain a civil discourse. It's far more effective, you know. It's far more effective. Steve Mumbling says here, okay, I'm not going to read that. I'm not going to read the first bit there, Steve, because I think I know what you're doing now. I think you're trying to wind me up, aren't you? Basically, he says it's a shame that Marcus didn't live long enough to see this. Him and Halfwit Henderson. Oh dear. Now, Steve, you're the one being rude and aggressive now. You used to say how impossible it was for astronauts to travel through the Van Allen radiation belts. All right. You know, Steve, after what you said about Marcus, I could challenge you to a meeting. If you want to meet halfway, mate, they say Madagascar, and say things like that out openly to my face, you're fine. But I think what you're doing now is, I think you are, and I've seen you do this before. I mentioned it. They've done this several times. You want to, because you're projecting Artemis derangement syndrome onto us. You want to see us behave that way. Now, Dave Langston, unfortunately, has done that. I'm not going to give you that satisfaction. And Henderson said it was impossible to communicate with spacecraft as radio signals couldn't penetrate the Van Allen radiation belts. Lol. And which of them was saying Saturn V couldn't reach space because it was too heavy at 2,800 tons. Artemis waste launch was 5,500 tons. Morons. Clueless laymen commenting on technology and physics they have absolutely no understanding of. Looking forward to seeing the defective video. Tell us how wrong they were. All right. Well, again, you see, you assume this is what NASA believers do. They assume this is your moment of triumph. You assume, there we go, we've proved you wrong, and it's absolutely not true, Steve. Artemis II launch live stream, David Smith says, I predict another conspiracy to explain why this happened, but it's still not true. Well, it depends if one appears. I mean, so far, the research is still ongoing. It was only a few days ago they splashed down. And then, here we go, Brett Riverboat says here, why don't they land on the moon? All of NASA's combined computer power in 1969 was less than today's average phone. We have never landed on the moon. If we did, Artemis would land there. In a few days, we'll see the AI doctor's pictures of the flag on the moon. So predictable. All right. Well, the thing about it is, first of all, you're right about the technology issue here. I must say, Brett, However, Artemis II was never going to be a mission that involved any kind of landing. It was a flyby. It was a free trajectory return. So that was not. They didn't take a lunar module with them. So there was no plan to land on the moon. As for the AI doctored pictures, well, we'll be hearing from Bart in a minute about that. Over the Moon says, "What would you recommend they land on the moon with?" Laugh. Over the Moon says, right. Over the Moon says here, let's be perfectly clear. Jarrah White staked his reputation on the claim that radiation exposure in the Van Allen belt, blah, blah, blah. Oh, we've already been through that. Yes, so no ifs or buts. He categorically stated it will kill them. He didn't say NASA is putting astronauts' lives at risk. Don't worry, Ben. There's going to be an unprecedented number of manned missions to the moon, daily or even hourly launches within this decade. Well, Over the Moon, if and when, we can discuss it at the time. I don't see it yet. I never said Artemis will prove Apollo. You said I'm convinced it will, which is untrue. Artemis 2 will prove that the Apollo detectives, and many like them, have been talking rubbish for years about subjects they know nothing about. Well, I don't. I think there has been a subtext here that somehow that Artemis 2 does prove Apollo. Maybe you never said the words, but among your community, that is a subtext, even though if you didn't actually say it yourself. And I disagree with the second bit completely. This is not proving that we've been talking rubbish. If you were going to watch secondhand streams, expect them not to sync. You watched on the BBC. That is one of the possible reasons the countdown audio and video didn't sync for you. Yeah, okay. The SLS did not take off early. Why you choose to watch the BBC rather than NASA live stream is anyone's guess. The latter's coverage was far better, as you would expect. Okay, well, that answers my question. Over the Moon then says, Artemis 2 is essentially flying through a solar firing range. Since we're at the peak of the solar cycle 25, the sun is more volatile than it has been for over a decade. Okay, I should correct you here. We're not at the peak of solar cycle 25. We're actually off the peak now. We're coming down from the peak. I know because I do weekly space weather reports on Hapanmo Radio. This mission is facing a high-stakes stress test from the jump. Just before the launch on March the 30th, the sun let off a super flare, a massive X1.4 class eruption. This wasn't just a space problem, it hit Earth, triggering an R3 radio blackout. High-frequency communications were crippled across the sunlit side of the planet. What's that? Something just blipped. Oh, I'm still here. The sunlit side of the planet. Specifically causing major disruptions for aviation, maritime radio, Southeast Asia, Northern Australia. I know, yeah. I mean, I covered this, yeah. I know about the flare you're talking about. The flare was followed by coronal mass ejection, a multi-billion-ton cloud of plasma, solar plasma that blasted at nearly 2,000 kilometers per second. While the crew were in orbit, they were hit by a G2 level geomagnetic storm. Outside the protection of the Earth's atmosphere, the Orion capsule was bombarded by high-energy protons. Yeah, Jarrah has talked about this. Indeed, I was watching the solar space weather carefully during this mission because of the possibility. Yeah. Over the Moon says, and now moving straight to the top of the charts this week, we have the latest sensation for all you doom and gloom fans out there. Please put your hands together for the Radiation Romantics. The Radiation Romantics with their debut smash hit, The Van Allen Belts. Ooh, Radiation Friends. That'll be marching up the charts, yeah. Then the Apollo detectives here. Oh, right, this is me. Oh, that's me. Okay. Over the Moon says NASA are not using boron nitrate nanotubes in the Artemis program. The yoga teacher is lying. They're talking about Raza. I don't know. See, I don't know much about Raza except what he's told me. All right. I mean, have you called the police about his alleged frauds? Dave says here, you say you couldn't see them faking it, yet I watched it and the footage showed it taking off before the end of the countdown and went to blank screen. I remember watching the Challenger launch footage with the launch coverage was totally different. All shots from the ground, none of the internal shots from the shuttle, and why they're obsessed with animation. Yeah. All right, you've covered that before. You have indeed. I think the 9-minute delay I thought was a bit dodgy. However, the actual countdown thing wasn't such a big issue because I think we've already discussed that it seemed to take off early when simply we were watching the studio got like the feed a few seconds late. And Dave Smith says, yeah, it's almost as if they knew smaller cameras and other text that can be used to show a major event. Over the Moon says to Dave Langston, that didn't happen on the NASA live stream. I noticed it on the BBC and other second-hand streams. I watched it, nothing suspicious. It often happens at launches. Well, I'll watch NASA next time, I think, this sort of thing happens. I will watch NASA rather than the BBC. Dave says to Over the Moon, why not show the launch from ground level? Why flick between cameras and pack it with animation? Oh, we've been through that. I watched it on Ben's feed. We've been through that. I think this seems to be a repeat of the same thread. Maybe I copied it twice by accident. Because we're talking here about the whole how many people watched it, different camera angles, why there's no independent coverage. What's this here? You were doubting the footage. My question to you. Oh, right. Okay, we've been through that. All right. It seems I've copied this particular thread twice. All right. Oh, yeah, I copied that thread twice. Okay, so now we have it. This is new. Steve Mumbling says, Ben has deleted my half-wit Henderson comment. Lol. He really can't handle the truth, can he? We're now seeing images of the Earth showing cloud formations that Allen and half-wit Henderson said were impossible. When is Jones going to man up and admit the Apollo defectives are talking complete and utter rubbish? Well, I'm not, Steve, because I don't think they are, for reasons I've explained. Now, I think this is another attempt. I made the mistake of taking the bait here, but this is another attempt to flame me into getting angry. And I spoke privately about this with some of the others because because another YouTuber who discusses this sort of thing from a hoax investigation perspective, disbelieving NASA, has suffered the exact same thing on his channel. I don't know if it was Steve Mumbling specifically, but it was a few people, including some of the people who comment on my channel, have been on his, leaving the very same kinds of inflammatory comments. And indeed, I actually took the bait here, and I shouldn't have. I said, I have not deleted any of your comments, you boring, repetitive, ivory tower dwelling clown. That's what I said to Steve. Will you stop making this accusation? You know very well comments don't always appear to you. Sometimes I can see them when you can't. It's a YouTube bug. You just wait for the reply to comments coming in the next couple of days. Well, it's actually this video, but I shouldn't have risen to the bait there. And Over the Moon, he jumped straight in there. Ben J.R. Porter. Why are all the moon landing hoax guys so damn angry since Thursday? And then Steve says, my, I have touched a nerve, haven't I? I think it's finally dawned on you that you were being led down the garden path by Allen and Henderson and co. The defectives are the true clowns, and now you know that. They used you as their personal, useful idiot. Oh, dear. You see there? And in fact, I did reply to him. I said, no, Steve, you've touched a raw nerve because you keep making this same baseless accusation against me that I'm censoring your comments. You know it's not true. You're not trying to bait me into getting angry to you. So you're not trying to bait me into getting angry. So you can misrepresent it as Artemis derangement syndrome. I don't care what your opinions are. I have valid responses to them all, and the same goes for Over the Moon and other skeppers. And there you go. Okay, so I did reply to him in that sense. And then I said to Over the Moon, because it's only since, and then this is reply to him about the angry thing. And I say to him, because it's only since then, that is Thursday, that the mumbler has turned up with provocation. Has turned up the provocation so he can pretend I've got Artemis derangement syndrome when I haven't. I have responses to all your points, and indeed you're hearing them right now. Over the Moon says, au contraire, I've been abused to a much greater extent since Thursday. Some poster on here is giving it to me right now, meaning Dave Langston. And I said, yeah, not by me. If somebody else is breaking the rules, I'll deal with them. And Over the Moon says, I can stand on my own 2 feet, and I'm being nice because they're obviously going through psychological trauma. All right. Well, it's up to you, Over the Moon. If you want to, I'm not going to mollycoddle you. You're a grown man. You can, if you want to bite back, bite back. And we have here Over the Moon saying here, the SLS solid rocket boosters. Sorry, give him a Steve Mumbling voice there. Okay. Will not be reused because it was discovered during the space shuttle program. The cost of recovery and refurbishment is economically inefficient compared to manufacturing new units. If the goal is hardware reusability, dropping components into corrosive salt water is an inherently flawed strategy. In contrast, SpaceX successfully recovers its boosters by landing them on designed pads near the launch site on autonomous spaceport drone ships, or using the latest technology, catching them in midair with the giant tower arms. This latest approach offers the advantage of eliminating landing legs, which reduces cost, mass, and complexity. As the philosophy goes, the best part is no part. This method, combined with fast turnaround time, represents the pinnacle of modern reusability. That's true, actually, yeah, and it's going to reduce costs. As Elon said, just imagine imagine how expensive you went and flew on holiday, you went to Marbella, right? And every time you landed, some guys came out of the airport with sledgehammers and smashed up the airplane, and you had to use a new airplane to get home. At every new flight, you had to use a brand new airplane. Just imagine how expensive the airline tickets would be. Reusing, effective, cheap, reusability is actually very much a bonus. Although, of course, when it comes to the secret space program, that's just kind of academic. And here we have another link here from Over the Moon. Let's have a look at it. As I said, I can't watch all these links if they're too together with. Here we go. So let's have a look. Could you see that? I think I shared with you, didn't I? I did, yes. Here we go. It's 39 minutes. What's that saying?
Go for your left. Great call out. The rocket is on its own.
Oh, here we go. Launch unseen camera onboard camera footage. Oh, I love these.
4 brave explorers.
This is where they actually film from the rocket. Yeah, this is wicked. I love these.
Rocket.
I might watch some of this. Can't watch it all. But...
Launched. Sound suppression water is flowing. 15.
Oh, nice.
And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7. RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1.
That water there is, they say, sound suppression. It also stops fires from breaking out from the exhaust flame.
Booster ignition and liftoff.
Hey!
The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Well, this is wicked. This is nice.
Good roll pitch.
I can't watch
1 minute.
This.
Approaching max Q. Traveling more.
Oh, I love these. There we go. That's the booster separation.
2 minute 9 second mark. We see throttle down.
Here we go. Yeah. All right. So we won't watch all of that now, but thanks for sharing that there, Over the Moon, because I love these pictures where it's on board the spaceship. They got like a camera on the spaceship. That's brilliant, man. Over the Moon says, lest we forget, Robert Williams was claiming just 3 days before liftoff that Artemis II would never go anywhere. Jarrah White insisted that if, by some miracle, it ever got off the ground, radiation would kill all the crew while in Earth orbit. And there were likes of Henderson and Allen swearing that man would never ever travel beyond low Earth orbit. One has an excuse for his absence. As for the rest, where are these guys now? While they were busy shouting impossible, NASA was making history. The silence from the skeptics is deafening. The skeptics meaning us. All right, well, Over the Moon, this is obviously we've revised this. I mean, you criticize us. Well, not you personally, but skeptics criticize we woo-woos for never changing our minds on anything. We just believe blindly. We don't investigate, and when we do, we come to a conclusion and we never change it. And now, well, what you know, Jarrah, he's changed his mind. Doesn't mean he's not turned into a Apollo believer, but he's reassessing his position because his prediction did not happen. And what are you doing? You're criticizing him for it. Oh, anyway, that's the end of those comments, I'm pleased to say. So what's next? Let's go back to my notes. I have covered anything I don't cover here, I can always cover on the live stream. Let's have a look at Bart's article, because Bart's written an article here. He actually made a video reading it out, but he's written this, and this is interesting. NASA's Artemis, too little, too late, proves the Apollo fraud. After putting one astronaut in space for 15 minutes, NASA supposedly set an 8-year goal in 1961 to land a rocket vertically on the moon, turn off the engine, leisurely walk around, launch back to the moon with a different rocket, back off the moon with a different rocket, dock with another spacecraft going over 3,000 miles per hour in lunar orbit, which Artemis cannot even achieve, burn another rocket to leave lunar orbit, and return safely to Earth from a distance 1,000 times further than the space station, all ahead of schedule within an 8-year goal, when today, after putting 350 astronauts in space and with 60 years of better technology, NASA is 8 years behind schedule just to fly someone around the moon once, or accomplish only 20% of what NASA claims they did 57 years ago in 1969, with 1/1,000,000th of the computing power of a cell phone on the very first attempt. Someone is lying somewhere, capitalized. Either NASA has the technology today to land people on the moon, which they are hiding, or they falsified the supposed moonwalking of 1969, as NASA has no problem with us believing that they have this moon landing ability by having already made the claim as such. Then NASA must have falsified the original claim. As you can see, it's an audio version of it here. You can see. There you go.
Mediterranean holidays from 749. P&O Cruises. Holiday like never before. Atoll protected.
When I first started, I clearly had no clue. First person I remember.
Nah. Hello there. This is Bart Sabrell of Sabrell.com.
All right, so this is just an audio version of the same thing you can watch. We'll carry on reading it. Here's a quote from a viewer after my interview about this controversial topic on the Joe Rogan Experience, who also read my book on the subject entitled Moon Man, the true story of a filmmaker on the CIA hit list. Quote, "If you still believe that we landed on the moon and our astronauts walked on its surface in 1969 after reading this book, I don't know what to say. Prior to watching the Joe Rogan interview, Bart Sabrell, regarding the Apollo 11 mission, I firmly believed the story. I never questioned its authenticity. Suddenly, the lie became so clearly obvious, and I delved further into the topic. That's why I read this book, and it only further confirmed the whole Apollo mission was one big hoax." Well, Mr. Sabrell belabors some points excessively. Perhaps that is what is necessary to get the truth to sink in. The recent, and this is Bart again, the recent revelation of this arrogant government deception that my Joe Rogan interview gave to millions of Americans has upset numerous moon landing fanboys, of whom I used to be the greatest of them all, having a shrine in my home of Apollo photographs that mesmerized me since my youth. When I became a filmmaker whose job is to make fake scenes look real, I then recognized that the moon that NASA used was absolutely a television studio using electrical light. In fact, you can prove the moon landing fraud with one photograph. Click here for the full article. Okay, so you can, that's just giving you a Dropbox link there. Yeah, so you can read the whole thing if you want, and or watch the video. But that's Bart's position on the whole thing. That's Bart has actually, and no doubt this will come up again, because you've got to realize there's only so much I can really go into now, because this investigation is ongoing. This investigation is a work in progress. It's only a few days since they landed. With it, it takes a while to gather all the evidence, but that evidence will be gathered. It will be. So let's go back to my notes. I think we've got everything now. And so, suffice to say, basically, I'm pleased that this mission went without a hitch. I wouldn't want to see anyone get killed or injured. I'm glad Jared's prediction didn't come true. I do hope we monitor these astronauts' health, though, if they really did go to the moon. Then again, if they did, I don't imagine NASA would put them in a position where they would get a deadly disease, which would surface in a couple of years and kill them. I believe that it's possible the secret space program craft actually acted as an escort for this Orion capsule, the Ingenuity spacecraft, and it's helped it in terms of maybe navigation, propulsion, and or radiation shielding, the last one being the most important. Alternatively, again, this is something we can discuss in the live stream. It's possible they sent a relay spacecraft to the moon, an unmanned relay spacecraft, while the Orion capsule with the Fab 4 on board stayed under radio silence in low Earth orbit. The answers, I think, are coming, but we don't have them right now. But suffice to say, one thing I have proved everyone wrong, everyone who disagreed with me, was this video is here. The video you said would never be made, I have made it. So more coming soon, including probably a live stream on this event. Probably it may be It might have to be next week now because I'm going to be away Saturday at another event. I'll be doing a written report for that. And Sunday night spanner night, so gas spanner show then. But in the meantime, thank you all of you for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order.